apostate, apostle. It's kind of like a palindrome.
Hello YouTube. I can honestly say that a week ago I did not know who Rebecca Watson was, and I certainly didn't know there was any debate within the activist atheist community over whether or not there's any sexism in the activist atheist community. I'd like to thank a video by Together for Peace for calling it to my attention when he was yelling at an individual named The Amazing Atheist for saying something stupid about it. I'd like to thank Aaron Ra for posting the videos of the conference, and for recognizing the value of critical feedback, which you'll see if you watch his comments at the end of the conference. I'd really like to thank Rebecca Watson. Rebecca, this is a video response to your video, but it's a response to the people commenting on your video. To those of you commenting on Rebecca Watson's video, I find that you're in several minds about two essential incidents being underlined by this video. The first incident is relatively innocuous and involves an individual I'm going to call Elevator Guy. The second incident involves a well-known, outspoken advocate for the activist atheist community, Richard Dawkins. I'm going to start with Elevator Guy. I've found three basic responses to Rebecca's about 1.5 minutes of commentary on the incident with Elevator Guy. The first response are people who recognize that Elevator Guy, although probably not evil, certainly did act in poor taste. In fact, that's about all Rebecca says in her about 1.5 minutes of commentary about him. The second group of comments about Elevator Guy focus primarily on the premise that Elevator Guy only asked for coffee. Now, this is a direct quote from Richard Dawkins' first post, but let's address only asking for coffee. If you're still listening, gentlemen, I want you to imagine you got a few too many speeding tickets and have wound up in jail. This is a thought experiment, and I'm not saying that you're speeders or are likely to wind up in jail. I just want to set the stage for the mental image I'm hoping will help you understand Rebecca Watson's position in that elevator. You're in jail for several days, and you would like to take a shower. As a matter of fact, you're in the public showers, late at night, having your shower, when another man, who you don't know, who is also physically larger and more powerful than you, enters the room, also ostensibly to take a shower. He's not standing particularly close to you, he's not making any particularly lewd eye motions at you, but please remember, in this example, he is bigger and stronger than you are. During the course of the showering, he inadvertently drops the soap. At that point he asks you, would you mind bending over and picking up the soap so he can continue to clean himself? And please don't take this request in the wrong way. At this point, you politely refuse, and he gets his own soap. Did anything bad happen? I want to examine your reason for not picking up the soap. There is an unspoken question implied in his request. In order for you to pick up the soap, you have to turn your back to him and bend over. In essence, you will have to make yourself more vulnerable than you already are, alone in the presence of a stranger who is physically more powerful than you are. Elevator Guy made exactly such a request to Rebecca. He asked her if she would be willing to make herself more vulnerable to him. Regardless of his motive for wanting her in his hotel room alone, she would have been alone in his hotel room, and thus more vulnerable. So to understand Rebecca's response, and many of the rest of our response to the situation, you only have to ask yourself, is it reasonable for a total stranger to ask you to voluntarily become vulnerable, physically? The answer to that question should be obvious. We become vulnerable to people we trust, not total strangers. Then we have the third response. People who are absolutely indignant that any woman should ever dare to tell them any time it is or is not appropriate for them to proposition this woman for sex. How dare you tell me when it's appropriate for me to tell you I'd like to have sex with you? I learned a word in this process, rather a word I already knew, having a use I hadn't previously seen, and that word is privilege. Gentlemen making this third comment, your privilege is showing. For those of you like me who hadn't heard this use of the word privilege before, let me explain it in a paraphrase of one of the better blogs I found defending Rebecca. Privilege is something we all have, to a greater or lesser extent, in some aspect of our lives. There's nothing inherently wrong with having privilege. However, when we are in an area of our lives where we have privilege and the person we are interacting with does not, it behooves a polite individual not to rub that privilege in the face of the person who does not have it. An example of privilege: we can argue that a poor individual has the privilege of a relatively small percentage of their income being taxed. We can argue that a rich person has the privilege of being able to purchase just about anything they want. Would any of you argue that it is in good taste for a rich person to flaunt their wealth in front of poor people? It's well within the rich person's rights, but it is not in good taste, and it is a pointing out of the poor taste of Elevator Guy's actions that you are all apparently reacting to. Then there's Dr. Dawkins. Dr. Dawkins had recently participated in a panel where Rebecca was an outspoken advocate, indicating that not everything is as good in the atheist community as it ought to be, speaking to a group of affected individuals to let them know there are in fact some problems within the community itself. Mr. Dawkins appears to feel that this message was inappropriate because it detracts from the better message of attacking people who are religious, or if you prefer, of defending the world from the excesses of religion. In 3 posts on a blog, he made several blatant, fallacious arguments. The first was when he posted comments to a theoretical Muslim woman that she shouldn't be so upset about her genital mutilation at the hands of religious zealots because Rebecca Watson was once propositioned for sex in an elevator. I wonder then if Mr. Dawkins will stop protesting religious abuse in Europe, since it isn't anywhere near as bad as the religious abuse perpetrated on atheists in the Middle East. After all, in the Middle East, atheists are killed. For that matter, I wonder if Mr. Dawkins might not be a little more supportive if Elevator Guy had tried to save Rebecca's soul instead of get into her pants. Mr. Dawkins exacerbated his situation by continuing to say unbelievably stupid things in the form of a blog post. In one of the posts, Mr. Dawkins compared the suffering of Rebecca Watson to his own suffering when he is viciously forced to share an elevator with someone who is chewing gum. In his final post, he claims to have no idea why people are reacting the way they are to his innocuous protests. Rebecca had nothing to complain about. After all, elevators in Dublin are safe. All you have to do to get out of an elevator is push a button, where you wind up in a safe, well-lit corridor. Now, I'm not here to malign the city of Dublin, Ireland, but I did pull up some interesting statistics from the Dublin Rape Crisis Center. I've got a link below to the Dublin Rape Crisis Center's website. You see, quite a few of the people responding to Rebecca's video are appalled that anyone would feel unsafe in merry old Europe. These statistics come from the year 2009, which are the most recent statistics available on the website, and in that year alone, 10,914 legitimate calls were placed to the DRCC for counseling. Legitimate calls means this is the number after the DRCC removed the prank calls. 3,584 of those 10,000 calls were repeat callers, and 82% of the callers were female. 74% of the callers were in Dublin. That's right, the tremendously safe city that you can just push a button to get out of an elevator in. 58.52% of the victims of adult rape were between the ages of 18 and 39. 36.25% of the victims reported experiencing other types of violence, along with the main abuse. And in the case of adult rape, 48.61% of the victims reported that the aggressor was a complete stranger. I don't find these statistics interesting. I find them horrifying. The statistics show that slightly less than 1% of the population of Dublin has experienced some sort of sexual assault within the span of 1 year. And that a vast majority of those people, and these are the people reporting, mind you, not the ones that are unreported, were women. So I'm going to leave you on one final question. What activities in your day-to-day life might you avoid if you thought you had a 1 in 200 chance of being assaulted or raped?